2005 is the year that YouTube was launched, and the year in which BMW brought us the E60 M5. It is not without its faults though, because it has a reputation for being extremely expensive to run and unreliable. In this video, I'm going to tell you why it's so good, but we're also going to look at some of those pitfalls and costs associated with the E60 and decide if it's something that you should risk or not. This was singularly BMW's greatest and worst M car. When it first came out, it was the world's fastest saloon, and yet, in touring guys, it was one of the most usable cars around. Still today, as a super saloon, there is very little to rival the overall experience that this car offers. And yet, it is one of the cheapest V10s on the market. If you are looking to get yourself an affordable, in inverted commas, performance V10, you might look at a Gallardo perhaps, but that would be 4 times more expensive than this. The V10 R8, even that would be 3 times as expensive as an M5. So it really is incredible the amount of value that is still available with one of these cars. Now I know that an Audi S8 with the V10, which was made I think roughly around the same time, can be bought for a bit cheaper than this, but it is simply not in the same league as a performance car. That's more like a luxury car with a V10 slotted in and adapted for that purpose. This is more like a supercar in a saloon car body. One of the crowning achievements is the engine. It is a Formula One inspired, naturally aspirated V10 with individual throttle bodies, variable valve timing. It revs to 8,200 RPM, peak power is 7,800. And so let's see how it goes down the road. I'm going to put it in M mode where you get the full 500 horsepower. It just revs up so quickly. The active side bolsters are really getting on my nerves. They're just a distraction. I don't think they're needed, but that engine is an absolute peach. And yeah, 6,000 is there. The Vanos must be changing, and it really picks up another gear. It sounds great as well. What an incredible V10! And I have to say, even from this little quick dash, I can see that low down, it's not that it's necessarily lacking in power, but it definitely all happens towards the top end. Now, for the time, this was a real tour de force, and one of the things that you first notice is that heads-up display with the revs, miles per hour, which gear you're in, which is actually pretty useful. The graphics may be a little bit dated, but it's quite nice. The E39, which is everybody's favorite M5, wasn't as sharp, didn't handle quite as well, it wasn't as focused really as one of these. Not detracting from it, but this really is a different driving experience. It really is monstrously quick and capable. Point to point, it's one of the quickest cars I've taken on this road. It requires concentration just because you get to the next corner so quickly. The steering is really nice for an M car. It's quite sharp, turning is good. You get a little bit of feel. I still don't think it's the best that there is out there, but it's probably the best I've used on a BMW and very well judged for this kind of car. The suspension has a bit of firmness to it, but ultimately it does absorb the bumps, especially if you're going quickly, then it starts to feel like it really is working properly. And every time it goes past 6, it just surprises you because there's that little extra rush. Now, I don't want to just bang on and on about this, but I can't say how much I hate the active bolsters. They just distract me when I'm trying to get on with it. And because this thing is so quick, it's very capable, but it's so quick that you have to concentrate with what you're doing. And if you get a little poke in the ribs in a tiny, like now, a tiny little, not a sharp radius bit of road, you're not really moving that way anyway, you get a little poke in the ribs, it's just distracting. I'm not for that at all, but what a car it is in every other way. There's all the other E60 stuff that you should be aware of. So obviously the interiors don't last quite as long, aren't quite as well made as the earlier BMWs, but I think they do look okay. And then there is that crisp angle design, which seems to be finally, after all the controversy, just seems to be coming on, into its own in M5 guys like this, with the wider stance and the body kit, the quad tailpipes. I think it's a really handsome, it's a really good looking car. And that engine is monumental. Don't forget, this is the very first V10 M car and the last, and also the last naturally aspirated one. It is a very, very exciting car to drive, and yet usable pretty much every day. So in terms of performance and handling, it's an excellent car. I think it looks pretty good and it's incredible value. So the downside that most people bring up is that they cost a fortune to run and that they are unreliable. Let's quickly look at the first one of those. Costs a fortune to run in terms of fuel consumption. Well, yeah, I mean, you'd be doing well to get an average of higher than 15 miles to the gallon, but it is a 5-litre V10. I don't know if it's something you can blame the car about. More interestingly though, are some of the issues that these are reported to have. So let's just pull over for a second. I'll tell you what tends to break, how expensive it is, and then we can decide if it's a risk worth taking or a gamble too far. There are quite a lot of things that can go wrong with this, so I had to have a list here with the prices so I could remember it all. But the first thing is the throttle actuators can go, and the price to replace those aftermarket is between 1,600, I guess, and then if you're buying from BMW, 2,000 plus the labour. So a fairly expensive part, but not ruinous really for a car of this type. The Vanos pump can go, that's about £1,600. Because of the SMG, they tend to be a bit heavier on the clutch, so you have to do it every 50,000 miles. And at £3,000, it is quite a significant cost, but if you're looking at supercar costs, not so much. The SMG pumps tend to fail. If you just replace the motor, then it's £400 for a new upgraded unit, plus the labour to fit it. If you were to buy the whole SMG unit, as BMW wants you to do, then it would be £3,000, which is quite a lot. The differentials can go, although that's not quite as common, and that would be £1,500 for a reconditioned unit. Lastly, the electrics on these can be a bit of an issue, and the hard drive tends to go on that, and that would be £700 for an exchange unit. The thing I haven't mentioned yet though are the rod end bearings. Now they tend to go. If you're not absolutely spot on with the servicing schedule with the oils, and they can go anyway, but you can spin a bearing and then you're in for a world of pain. To get a retrofitted sort of upgraded setup so you don't have to worry about that, costs about sort of between £2,000 and £3,000. Once that's done though, that one-off cost, the engine is good to go and should be pretty reliable. So all in all, what do we think? As a car, as a sports saloon, I think that this is absolutely amazing. It's something BMW will never be able to repeat. After this, I think they went for the F10, which was a twin-turbo V8, which is with immense power, but it doesn't have the charisma and the special nature of the 10. The rod end bearings really shouldn't be something that would need doing this regularly, that could fail on a car like this. But it isn't a huge cost. Yes, £2,000 to £3,000, but it's a one-off cost. Once it's done, you don't need to worry about it. The other things, really, from the fuel consumption to the other bits that need to go wrong, which are, you know, a couple of grand, under 1,000, some of them to fix, well, if you're running a V10 and you look at a V10 supercar, like a Gallardo perhaps, or even non-V10s, but if you look at Maseratis, Ferraris and so on, those sorts of costs are absolutely normal, even in many ways quite restrained. The reason why this has developed such a bad reputation is because they got so cheap and they were so affordable, and people don't expect to have to pay those kinds of bills. But in actual fact, for the performance, I think that the running costs really aren't that bad. Huge thanks to Lawrence for bringing down this M5. It really is an absolutely awesome thing. And apart from a couple of little things, it really is, I think, in many ways, peak M5. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want me to do a review on one of your cars, please get in touch and we can see if we can arrange something. Thank you and see you soon.